Vicky, and welcome to day 2 of our 5-day longevity challenge.
Well, hello, Lauren. Thank you for having me here. I love this challenge. I love yesterday, and I'm so excited for today
Oh,
and what you
awesome.
have in store.
Yeah. Did you find that it was enough just to do everything in the session, or did you think about anything or reflect on anything afterwards?
I did some more of the breath work, so I really love that because
Awesome.
right now I need the calming down of energy because I have a ton of things going on in my mind. So I found that really, really helpful right on time. And I did a little bit of that reframing that we talked about, associating older age with illness. So thank you so much for opening my eyes to the possibility of not having the two, right? Go hand in hand. Because if there are other people who have done it and are living an ill-free old age, then that's possible for me too. And that's enough for me at this point to
That is
know.
brilliant. That is brilliant. Awareness of the problem is the first step, and then knowing that it's possible to change the problem is really all you need. Because once you know it's possible, it can be yours.
Yeah. Yes.
Why not? Why not? Why not
And
be the first person in your family to break that trend? Because you said it was like a family thing. You hadn't seen it happen in your history. But things are very different now. If you look at our history, people didn't live as long, and now we're living longer. So now we're figuring out how to live longer and healthier. So that's just the next evolution. If you look at your great grandparents, they lived a very short life. And then the grandparents lived a longer life, but maybe not as healthy. And now we are the next generation. It just keeps getting better and better and better.
yeah.
We're learning things along the way. So, yay. Okay, so today we are dealing with nutrition, movement,
Mhm.
and rest. So I want to give you a few little thoughts. Let's start with nutrition, and I'll give you my thoughts on nutrition, and then you can bounce ideas and whatever. So 5 years ago, I went plant-based, and there was a reason that I went plant-based. One, COVID was happening. So there was a lot of fear around. A lot of people were talking about the fear of dying and whatever. It was kind of my answer to COVID. I had always said to myself that if I was given a cancer diagnosis, for example, what I would do is I would go looking for the perfect diet to get over cancer or to reverse cancer if it was possible. And I knew that there were diets out there that could do that. And I had a chat with a friend, and she said that she had crippling rheumatoid arthritis, and how she had turned it around was through going plant-based. And so I started doing my research. And at the beginning, what I did the research on is just the benefits. What are the benefits of going plant-based? And I found brilliant, brilliant YouTube videos. And I went down a rabbit hole learning about going plant-based. And it really did work for me. I've always known that my body works best on a lot of fruit and vegetables. And I just started eating a lot of fruit and vegetables. I stopped eating meat, and I haven't eaten meat for 5 years, except maybe a little bit of biltong. I don't know if you know what biltong is. It's a South African dried meat that comes usually from buck, like kudu or springbok. So it's more natural
Mhm.
and therefore kind of safer. They haven't been fed anything, they're out in the wild. So I kind of trust that more. And plant-based people do sometimes eat meat, and then I also sometimes eat fish. So over the last 5 years, I've moved more and more and more into a Mediterranean diet. So I will include eggs some days, I will include fish some days. The Mediterranean diet is known today as the top diet that people can follow easily,
Yeah.
that is going to give you longevity. So if we're talking about longevity, I think Mediterranean diet is the top longevity diet. And you see it in a couple of the blue zone areas as well, where people have lived really, really long and they're living on that diet. So the idea is a lot of whole
Tofu.
grains. What I mean is you don't want very grains to be very refined. So for example, you would opt for brown rice rather than the very refined rice, and whole grain pasta rather than the very refined white pastas.
Mhm.
So that sort of thing. And then eating a lot of fresh fruit and vegetables. And your fresh fruit and vegetables would be the main course, and the meat would be the smaller section. So
Mhm.
generally how most people eat these days, or the SAD diet, they call it the SAD diet, the standard
The
American
opposite.
diet, is mostly meat and your little bit of sides of veggies. So this is going the opposite way around. Small amounts of meat and the best quality meat you can find, lots of fish. In fact, all the best diets in the world seem to include a lot of
A
fish.
lot of fish.
And then, of course, the Japanese way and the
Yeah.
Eastern way is also a lot of tofu, a lot of soy as well. So a lot of alternatives. And if you look at all the South American diets that have done really well, Costa Rica is one of the blue zones, and those diets are very rich in the beans. So
Hmm.
lots of beans and lentils. So you do want to have a lot of protein sources that are plant-based. So your beans and your lentils, and also having just a little bit of meat here and there. So I think that I've got to the point now, having done this journey for 5 years, that I am now going to start incorporating little bits of meat into my diet. I haven't really, but I think my iron levels are low. And that is one of the problems that can come from going
Mm.
plant-based. And even though I take iron, it's not the same as actually having an iron source.
Yeah.
I do try and avoid dairy as far as possible because there are so many beautiful plant-based milks around. There's oat milk, macadamia, soya milk,
Soy, yeah.
almond milk. There's so many great alternatives. And it's starting to get to the point, even here in South Africa, where those are almost the same price as dairy milk anyway. So let's just talk about it from the health perspective and the longevity perspective. In the countries where there is a lot of dairy, that is where there is the highest incidence of breast cancer and prostate cancer, all of the
Hmm.
reproductive organ cancers. So that is a very good reason to move away from dairy, especially if there is cancer in your family. Although remember that 25% of any illness is hereditary and 75% is lifestyle. So it's not always hereditary causes, and it can be even lower than that in terms of hereditary causes. So you're really looking at lifestyle choices. So that's my take on the food side. There's one other thing that I like to recommend, and that is eating as many colors as possible on the plate. That's one of the things the plant-based people are really big into because if you look at a really bad meal, like all the cheapy sort of fast food meals that are out there, those are all very bland looking. And when we're eating a whole plate full of bland colors, like a whole lot of gray, not gray, obviously,
The
but like
brownish.
brownish colored things, beige. We don't want to go beige. You want to go colorful. And the more colorful you can eat, the better. And a lot of greens, greens are so important. All the kales and the spinach and the broccoli and all of that good stuff. Really, really super important. So, yeah, how does that fit in with what you believe about diet and nutrition?
Yeah, definitely worth considering lowering the meat in my menu. And we actually had this as a family decision a while back when we realized that we are consuming too much meat. I've never thought I could give up on meat because I just really like the taste of it. Sorry for any people watching out there who might feel offended, but it's just how I've grown up. But we did realize that we are consuming way too much. So the moment we decide to lower the meat, we can literally, within a few days, feel our bodies a whole lot lighter
Mm.
and more energetic. But it is important to pay attention to really see the difference because when you are busy in everyday life, you just don't notice how the food actually makes your body feel. You don't listen to the body usually. You don't get the signals because you're so busy doing other stuff. But I intentionally paid attention. And there's definitely a huge difference when we lower the amount of meat that we consume. And there's something interesting in our cultural history here in Southeastern Europe. Back in the days, and I'm talking about, I don't know, probably 50, 100 years ago, when most of the families were living in villages where they would grow their own food. Usually, a family of like couple generations would live in the same house and they would raise a pig for the whole year. They would take care of it, feed it. It was part of the family. But there comes a point when this pig serves the family. So around Christmas, that would be when the whole family gathered. It was a ritual. It does have a very deep meaning of sacrificing the animal to feed the family. But the thing is, with this one pig, the whole family, that would be 10, 15 people living under the same roof, that will be all the meat they will all get until the next one, next year comes. So I don't know, maybe they would eat once a week, very, very little meat. And they were much healthier. Well, they didn't live longer back in those days, but they lived healthier until the end of their lives. And this is culturally embedded in our society here, but the way that the westernization comes in, the rapid pace with which it enters our lives, sometimes makes us forget these traditions and the wisdom in
Mm.
those old traditions. So that is something that I thought it might be worth mentioning from a different perspective in a different part of the world.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that because that happens here in our tribal cultures as well. There's an area in our country in the Eastern Cape where you just see goats everywhere, goats and sheep, and people have their own animals. That is just normal how it is. And they do have ritual slaughtering as well. And it's also a beautiful event. And so the cows, well, in India, obviously the cows are sacred, but here, it's part of what's called Lobola here. So here in South Africa, our traditional tribal people will give cows as Lobola as a dowry. So when the woman gets married, the woman comes with cows. Nowadays,
Ah,
it's often money, but there's usually a cow thrown in still, or there can be if they're in the Eastern Cape because they all keep their own animals. So they are subsistence farmers, and that is the traditional culture. So I think if you went back to all of the ancient cultures, that is how we lived. We would be growing our own vegetables and we would have our own animals. And I've got a friend, she's got a small holding in the UK, and they do the same thing. They have sheep though. So it's
yeah.
not pigs, but sheep. And they grow that sheep, and then eventually they do eat the sheep. And I find it quite hard. It's quite hard for me because I've got a very soft heart for animals, and it's really hard to think of that. But the way they do it is all beautiful, and it's the way to honor the animal.
Yeah,
So you love
yeah.
the animal, and then you love the animal in its final
Other form.
gift as well. Yeah, and that is very special.
You
So I
know,
love that you say that because it's that consciousness that we can bring to our eating. And you also touched on another thing about the intuition and how you're noticing your body. So
mm,
intuitive eating is a real thing. So if we could just focus on our body's cues. If I wasn't so in these last 5 years so adamant that I wasn't going to eat meat, I wouldn't be in the situation now where my iron levels are too low. Instead of just listening to my own intuition, in those moments where my intuition said, now's the time to have a little bit of meat, I should have just done it.
yeah.
And yeah, so I am taking my own medicine and I'm going to start shifting that. I'm still going to be quite choosy, get it from the best sources that I can, and just
Yeah.
try that and see how it goes with my body. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Listen,
then
listen to your body.
listen to the body. Yeah. Intuitive eating is so important. If we just start listening to our bodies, we will actually already be healthier. And also to eat when we're hungry rather than to just eat.
For the
And
sake of
then,
eating.
yeah, and one of the ways that we can really make a difference to the way that we eat is to consciously stop and eat. So one of the things that has gone out of all of our cultures is to eat together as a family. So we will eat with the TV blaring or with phones on the table or with kids still gaming. And that is something that has to shift if we're going to really get the best out of our food. So the way we would do it in positive intelligence is as you eat the food, you really notice everything because a PQ rep, remember, is focusing on one physical sensation for 10 seconds. So before you have a sip of something that you're drinking or a bite that you're eating, you're going to focus on everything. You're going to focus on the sound that it makes when your fork hits the plate. And as you bring it to the lips, what does it taste like as it touches the lips? As it goes onto the tongue, what is that taste? And you savor everything. And then as you start to chew, what little juices come through and what does it taste like as you start to swallow that food? And just really, really getting intensely focused on the physical sensation of eating. What does it sound like as you chew? You just want to really get interested and curious about the sound and the taste and the texture and
Mm,
the look of the food and everything. Just really fall in love with that meal on your plate. And you will find that the interesting thing is that you will eat less because you're so
yeah.
focused on that experience that you will also know when you get to the point of satiety. So that's a little tip I could give in terms of really getting present when we eat and using the PQ reps to do that because PQ reps can be on your everyday things. So when you're brushing your teeth, you're going to focus on what it feels like when the toothbrush hits your teeth and what each little tooth feels like as you brush your teeth. That would also be doing a PQ rep. So it could be in your natural everyday things that you're doing. You are now hyper intensively focusing on that task at hand. And that way you drop into presence in that moment as you do that task. And yeah, so try it in one meal today. Try and do a PQ rep on
Okay.
something either when you're sipping your coffee or your water or your tea or eating something. Just see if you could just bring yourself into that presence.
Yeah. I've done this a couple of times. One time
Oh,
was during something like a retreat, but it had teachings and all that. And one of the ladies that came in to teach taught us about active meditation. So it's like when you're walking, you want to feel the whole foot stepping in. And one of the things that we did was take a piece of chocolate and even before you put it in the mouth, you look at it from all different angles, shape, color, light, shadows, all of that, and then experience the whole process of putting it in your mouth and tasting it. So I've been through the theory once, but it's so interesting to apply it in everyday life. And I guess that will slow down the whole process of eating so you will not overeat because when you're focused on it, when you're concentrated on every bite, it just slows down time and gives you the space to notice when your body starts giving you the signals that it's had enough, right?
exactly. Yeah. So you also want to notice what it does in the body. So I also learned this technique from Deepak Chopra years ago. So how to get over an addiction. And it's how I gave up because I was social smoking for a while. Can you believe it? I'm like all about health and healing. And there was a time that I was social smoking. Not a lot of cigarettes a day, but enough to be damaging to the body, right? And to give up, I read a book called Overcoming Addictions by Deepak Chopra. For the cigarettes, you had to remove yourself from the situations where you normally have them because a lot of people, it's about the social aspects. If they're at the office and now everybody has a smoke break together, that's a time to go and socialize and chat. So I had to remove myself from situations, which means that I'm not allowed to have a cigarette with a glass of wine in my hand, and I'm not allowed to have a cigarette with a cup of coffee in my hand, because those were the only times that I would have a cigarette was if I was either having a drink or having a cup of coffee, because I didn't even like the cigarette without those things. Right? So, first, you remove yourself from those social situations where you would normally do it. And the second step is that when you do it, you now go and on your own, you're solo now, there's no social interaction, and you go and you savor it like you would savor food. So, you notice what it is like when you put it in your mouth, what happens when it goes into the throat, what happens when it goes down the throat. And Honestly, it took maybe half a cigarette for me to give up smoking when I realized the damage it was doing, like what was actually happening in my body. Like, it was so quick and easy with that method to understand that this was very damaging and that I didn't like it. So it was like,
Mm.
notice what your fingers smell like. Really get up close and personal with what that cigarette is doing to you. So yeah, that was really good. And it's using it in a completely different way, but it's still using consciousness and intuition and being really present. So you can use being present to thoroughly enjoy something, and you can use being present with something that is bad for you to realize how bad it is for you. Yeah,
I
the
love that.
power
So
of presence.
well,
Yeah.
in both situations, it benefits you in the end, right?
Exactly. Because now,
Being
would you
conscious.
absolutely gorge out on food if you were present? You wouldn't. If you were being present with your meal, you wouldn't overeat. He talks about how one of the CEOs he worked with was very overweight, and what they wanted to do is lose weight, and they just used positive intelligence to do that. And
Mm.
because it made him conscious of when he was overeating, and then he stopped.
It
And
didn't take someone to tell him, stop this, do that.
exactly.
When it comes from inside, from your own insight of what is
Yes.
actually happening, it's so much easier.
So much easier. Nobody's telling you what to
It's
do. You're
natural.
just being
Yeah.
present. So you're now realizing what feels good in the body as well. So being present with what it does in the body too. So did that meal feel good? Because we're so not in touch with our bodies. We are not intuitive. We just don't think about what that last thing did in our bodies unless it really made us feel awful.
Yeah.
But then do we still go back to it? Yes, we do if it tasted really good. So that's what this presence really can give to you is this, the more present you can become in your life, the more you can actually slow things down and bring consciousness to it, the easier actually everything becomes. You don't have to think. You just have to be.
Yeah.
And then we'll become more and more like our ancestors were. They knew what was the right thing. And then we would know that all of these processed foods are not good for us. What about shopping mindfully, going into the grocery store and really looking at the shelves and looking, would that feel good to me? Is that something in this box, in this packet? Is that going to feel as good to me as what I can see here in the fresh food department? And so now shopping more from where the fresh foods are instead of where all of the processed foods are.
Packaged. Yeah.
Because actually, that's one of the main messages in being plant-based as well, is actually just to eat less processed food. So I think that's enough about nutrition. We've really delved quite deep. There's one other thing I do want to mention, and that's intermittent fasting, because there's a
Mm.
lot of information about it. I read a book about it called The Fast 800, and it was about intermittent fasting and high intensity interval exercise. So I just want to give you the latest on that. And there's a lot of people doing 36-hour fasts now, and I just want to make a caution on that. Intermittent fasting is really good, but you must ease into it. So, for example, for women age of 40, a 16-8 fast is a really good idea. So, over sleep, you've already got 8 hours, and then you want to just delay your breakfast, either dinner or breakfast. You start your first meal later, or you end your last meal earlier so that you can get to 16 hours fasting and 8 hours eating. So you eat in a 8 hour window. That would be pretty healthy. And then you can maybe move to a 24-hour fast over time as you get used to lengthening this a little bit more, lengthening the time between when you are eating. So you go 16 hours, then you can go 17 hours, then you can go 18 hours. Build it up to the 24-hour fast. But if you're going to look at doing these 36-hour fasts, you really need to do it under doctor's supervision because it can actually be very damaging and dangerous. So I just want to caution against that because I know it's very popular, but it does carry some dangers.
Yeah.
Just take it
Thank
slowly in your own time. Just again, listen to your body. Listen to your body. It is important to get to that point of ketosis. I get it, because that really can shift things. But there isn't only one way to do that. It doesn't have to be 36 hours to do that. So I just wanted to mention that. And then on the movement side, the latest studies are that this whole 10,000 steps thing is not really what we should be going for.
you. Never been a
Okay.
fan of it anyway.
Yeah,
So thank
yeah.
you.
First
Permission
of
slip
all,
here.
Yeah, 10,000 steps a day was created because that's how the little pedometers worked, and you didn't really need the 10,000 steps anyway. What we really need, it's about 8,000 steps. So there's a point where you can increase your health, increase your longevity, and there's a certain amount of exercise where if you do too much, it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make
Mm.
any difference. And the other thing is that high intensity interval training is much quicker and easier to fit into your day. And so it is preferable. They did a study recently that was based on the Norwegian 4x4. So I'm just going to quickly describe the Norwegian 4x4. The study that they did was they took a group of 50-year-olds and over 2 year time span got them to a point of having a 20 years younger heart, which is amazing. So they increased their
Wow.
VO2 max. What they mean by a 20 years younger heart is that as we age, the heart becomes harder and smaller. And that changed within 2 years. And their VO2 max obviously improved, which is how much, I can't remember exactly how to explain the VO2 max.
The volume of the
And
blood that it circulates and
volume of
pumps.
blood that the heart is
Volume of,
circulating.
okay.
Well done. Thank you. Volume of blood that I should know this because when I trained to be an aerobics instructor, we had to learn about VO2 max, but that was 35 years ago. Anyway, their VO2 max improved hugely. So, how it works is that you want to start increasing your high intensity interval training. So, you could start off with, for example, the way I was taught to do HIIT, high intensity interval training, is to do just 20-second bursts. So, increase your heart rate for 20 seconds at a time. And that still is good. So you're going for a walk on the beach, you just sprint for 20
Mm,
seconds and then you carry
mm.
on walking, normal pace. Then you sprint for another 20 seconds and you carry on a normal pace. So that is a simple way to ease into it. And then if you want to start getting a little bit higher grade, you start moving into 30 seconds or 1 minute. Okay, so you're pushing yourself to about 85%. 85 to maybe even 90%, where you can't, when you push yourself, you're not talking at that time. You can't talk because you're
Mm.
really pushing yourself. And it doesn't have to be running, it could be swimming, it could be rowing, it could be walking upstairs, whatever it is, but you're going to push yourself, your body for that little bit, a little burst, okay? And then you're going to come back to just your normal average, whatever it is that you were doing. I like the idea of doing it as swimming. So, swimming, you can do sprints for a
Yeah.
little while. It's a lovely way to exercise. And then the Norwegian 4x4 is that you actually do 4 minutes of really pushing yourself. 4 minutes where you cannot talk to somebody. And in this study, they were doing that once a week. They were doing the Norwegian 4x4. So it's 4 minutes, and then you take a 3 minute break where you're just going at an average intensity, so 70% of your VO2 max, and then you go again for 4 minutes, and then you go to that 3 minutes, and then you go another 4 minutes, and then you go 3 minutes. And
So
you're doing
the,
it four
the
times.
the whole 4 times are done once a day, right?
Once a
With
week.
a
Yes,
week,
once
once a
in a
week.
week. You would only do the Norwegian 4x4 once in a week. So you want to train for 4 days a week. So you want to do whatever it is you do. And the Norwegian 4x4, you only choose on one of the days. And in that study that lasted over 2 years, that was enough. Once a week doing the Norwegian 4x4 was enough. But I would imagine that they had to build up to that.
Mm.
So I would highly recommend that you don't just start with a 4x4 straight away. 4 minutes of this 4 times in a workout is pretty rough. Like right at the beginning, I would just ease up to that. So start doing a little bit of high intensity interval training in whatever is your favorite exercise. It could be skipping with a skipping rope is a
Oh,
lovely way to do it. It could be another way, a beautiful way of doing it is rebounding. I was doing a lot of my HIIT exercises on our trampoline outside. Rebounding is a very, very good way to do it. And then you just really hit it for a while. You're really jumping. But don't jump on the floor, please. Everybody also mentions that it's really important to do resistance training or some kind of weight training as you get over 40. And I do agree with that, although I haven't done that for myself yet. But I love yoga, Tai Chi, Pilates. That's good forms of resistance training as well. Martial arts is good. So yeah, whatever interests you. So
Mm.
my big thing with movement is to find that thing that makes you feel fantastic. Really, really wonderful. If it's dancing, then do that. If it's jumping on a rebounder, then do that. If it's swimming in ice cold water and doing the cold water immersion thing, then do that. It must light you up because if it
Yeah.
doesn't light you up, you're not going to carry on with it. So you want to just
I
get that high.
Yeah, I used to go swimming. That was one of my dreams to have set on my calendar. Twice a week or three times a week, I would go to the pool and I would swim. And I did that for a few months until I realized that the chemicals in the water were really messing up with my eyes and my nose. I would keep coughing 2 days in a row after my swimming time, but I loved exactly what you said. I didn't do it on purpose. It's just how it came to me naturally. I will just swim slowly, and then all of a sudden, I will start this higher intensity style of swimming, and then I will slow down again. But right now, we are very big on table tennis in our family.
Oh,
And
great.
it's not really super intensive, but it does make you sweat.
Table
And
tennis
yeah,
is one of the top ones for longevity, by the way.
really.
Because it's full brain activity. In fact, tennis and table tennis are listed as two of the top things you can do for your longevity. They are really, really brilliant. There is so much happening when you're playing table tennis because you are having to use your mind as much as you are using your body.
Yeah.
And it does have an incredible effect. So keep going with that. And then you've added in the fact that it's a wonderful family thing to
Yeah.
do. So you're
Yeah.
adding in all of that. You're adding in so many of the things that we're going to talk about over this week. You're bringing in relationships, you're bringing in joy, you're bringing in everything is coming into you guys playing table tennis as a family. So I love how intuitive you are and how you follow your intuitive nudgings and you're just doing all the right stuff. It's fantastic. It's
Thank you.
fantastic.
We actually did some tennis probably 3 years ago. My girls signed up for tennis lessons. And instead of just watching them, me and my husband just bought a racket and we would just play around. We would just, we loved it.
Absolutely
And then we would
brilliant
play
thing.
the four of us all at the same time.
Absolutely brilliant. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. That is so good for you as a family to have that. I think that is fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. You are so doing the right things. And yeah, I don't have to tell you anything more
No,
about
no,
you.
no. There's always something to learn. And some of the stuff that you shared today, I never heard of them before.
Oh, good. That's
Yeah.
what I was hoping for, just to give you some new things. But you know, they change all the time. And so it is about following our intuitive nudgings. There's going to be new studies coming out all the time about this is better and that is better. But what feels good for you is what's best. That is really
Mm.
what's best. Really want to find those things. And you are doing that. So fantastic. And on
Thank
the rest side, so all of the studies are saying the same things year after year after year. We need a good bedtime routine. And if you're going to have good rest, you're going to have a good bedtime routine. So there's two things that are really important in that bedtime routine. One is that you're winding down, and two is that you're getting off screen.
you. Mm.
And the ideal time to be off screen before you go to sleep is an hour. So you want to have maybe in the first part of that hour, you go and have a nice relaxing bath or shower. So you're really doing something, beautiful for your body. And then in the second part of the hour, you're reading a book or you're just chatting to your partner or your child or whatever it is. But you want to do something that is restful. And that good bedtime routine can make a huge difference. The other two things that make a huge difference, because a lot of women through menopause are struggling to sleep. And it's really important to have the melatonin levels high. And
Mm.
there's two important ways of doing that. And the one is to make sure you have sunlight during the day. So have some time of exercise during the day. You want to have bright light during the day and you want to have as dark as possible during the night. So that's how you get that whole melatonin balance right in the body, is to have the vitamin D. And if you need a supplement with vitamin D, if you live in a very dark area or you're in a dark season like the winter, make sure you are supplementing with vitamin D. And then at the night, if you are still struggling to sleep, have some melatonin at night and also that darkness. And if it's the hot flashes that are waking you up, so if it's because you're sweating and you're really getting really hot, I know a lot of women just kick off the bedclothes or they have their feet out of the bed. It's something I only started doing in midlife that I never did before. I always needed to be as warm as possible. But keeping your room 16 to 18 degrees centigrade, keeping the room cool is very important as well. So in those summer months, if you need a fan, it's a good idea. I'm not a big fan of I'm not a big fan of having an air conditioner because I find an air conditioned room you can feel, especially if it's right near the bed, you can feel cold. But it's necessary. If it's too hot in the area, then an air conditioning might be, and a cold shower can help. So those are my tips in terms of sleeping. And I think that's it. I'll just give you our reflection exercises just briefly before we go. So, the reflection exercises for today are: how does my body feel when I nourish it with fresh, whole, colorful foods? So, your action step then would be to eat at least 5 different colored fruits or veggies today.
Yeah.
And in terms of movement, what forms of movement bring me the most joy and vitality? So reflect on that. And then the action step would be to move your body for 30 minutes in a way that lights you up. So if it's dancing around the lounge, if it's playing table tennis and playing tennis, do that. And then the third reflection is: what one shift can I make to improve my sleep routine? So, for example, an action step would be to commit to a screen off wind down 1 hour before bed. So, decide what you will do instead to ease you into a restful night's sleep and try that out tonight. So,
Yeah.
that is what's in the playbook for today.
All good stuff. All
So I
good
hope you
stuff.
saw that. It's in the classroom. There's a little playbook which gives you basically your reflection exercises so you can go and do your reflection and your action steps when you have a gap.
Well, thank you for reminding me about that 1 hour no screens before bed because even though I've heard it's one thing when you just hear it, but it's a totally different thing when you apply it. And these days I've been struggling to find time to read the books that I've taken from the library. So I'll use now this time to focus on my reading instead of mindlessly scrolling through my phone when it's not necessary. Like 9 p.m., it's not. The
So
world
proud
will
of
not
you.
end if I don't scroll through my phone.
Yeah, I was so proud of you for implementing that. That'll be really, really
I'll do
good.
that.
This has been such a magical conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And apologies from my mom that she couldn't make it. She's down with the flu. And yeah, but it
I
was
hope she
really
she
special.
recovers quickly and joins us
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah, that'll be fun. It will be great. I've got her on this protocol. So, what we do whenever we get any kind of cold and flu in our household is we don't do antibiotics or anything like that. We
Mhm.
take homeopathic stuff. And I found this brilliant product called Corizalia. I don't know if you can get Boiron products everywhere in the world. We use oscillococcinum as well. But Corizalia, you take 1 hour of these little tablets, and oh my word, you get better within a day or two, as long as you rest as well. Rest
Yeah.
is so important if you are ill. And I have a take on illness as well, colds and flus. I don't think they are necessarily a bad thing. I think they are the body's ways of detoxing
Mm.
and to not see it as bad, but to see it as a good thing. So there's 3 things I do if my body gets ill. The one is I take Corizalia or Asagolococcinum or the Pegasus range, cold and flu, any kind of homeopathic. And the second thing I do is I will listen to beautiful self-hypnosis sessions that are specifically about relieving cold and flu, and I find them absolutely amazing. I could send you some links. They're really stunning. And the third thing I do is I watch comedies or listen to comedies
Mm.
because anything funny, laughter really is the best medicine. Actually, wait, there's a fourth thing. I rest. But anytime I feel tired, I just go to sleep and I rest as much as possible. I do not do my normal work. I just get myself through it because I find if I give myself one day off, I can beat a cold or
Yeah.
flu. But if I don't give myself that day off at the right time, then it will go on for a week. The rest is the most important thing at the first oncoming symptoms. If I don't
Yeah.
take the rest, then I'm in for a week. And I don't want to
Yeah.
be in for a week. I'd rather get over it in a day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
hope those were helpful. That was our day
Yeah.
on the body. Yay.
Hey,
Okay, so
thank you
we've done
so
mind
much.
body. Tomorrow is spirit, my probably my favorite topic of them all. So
Mm,
yeah,
love
look
that.
forward to tomorrow.
Yes. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much for being here.